Welcome to the Financial Coaches Podcast, where we talk about how to build your practice from startup to scale up while being the kind of coach your clients crave. Finally, a podcast for financial coaches. Here are your hosts, Maria Casillas and Cody Sizemore.
Well, hello and welcome back to the Financial Coaches Podcast. My name is Cody Sizemore. I'm joined here by my lovely co-host, Maria Casillas, and we have a juicy topic to get into with you guys today. Actually came from a fellow listener, so I'm excited to share all that and whatnot. But before we do that, I just want to do a few things with you guys. I want to first say thank you guys for tuning into this episode. And if you're one of those people who like this episode, I've been listening to every episode for the last several months. What are you talking about? We want to say thank you to you, especially because you are what we call our every weekers, and you're the reason that we keep doing this. It's the lifeblood of our entire show. So we really appreciate that. And hey, if you find that this episode is valuable or any of the episodes that you listened to before, do us a favor and share the show. Share the show with someone else so they can also get the value. It's a really good way for us to continue to allow this show to grow. Because we don't get paid for advertising or anything like that. We do this all for free and out of the kindness of our own hearts. So just doing that one simple action will really go a long way. And furthermore, the person that we actually connected with that asked this question is actually a person that's a part of our Facebook group. So if you haven't joined that, you should, because it's a really cool place to be. You can ask questions, you can connect with us, and then there's a lot of things that we do to give you guys value throughout the month as well. So that Facebook group is simply called the Financial Coaches Community by New Money Habits. So it's free to join. I think you just have to answer a few quick questions about who you are and what you do and why you're here, and then you're in. So connect into there and say hi, and we're excited to see you in there. So with all that being said, Maria, how you feeling today?
I'm good. Thank you. Excited to have this conversation.
Good. Yeah, I am too. And I think that we just jump right into it. As much as we would love to talk about daylight savings times because you're in Arizona and I'm in Ohio and you don't do it and we do it, we won't talk about that at all, even though I just did.
Fair enough.
So, all right. So this, let me pull up this question here really quickly. So this question comes from a listener named Jenny. And she reached out to me because she just wanted I think she was just looking for a second opinion. She was looking for a little bit of guidance in this situation. And it's a tough situation that, she's in. And I have also been in myself, especially earlier on in my journey. And I'll just read it. So it says this. Hey, Cody. So I currently have a client who who has one coaching session left with me, but they have completely ghosted me after a few follow-ups. I remember listening to one of the episodes which may have touched upon this and how to respond, but I was curious if you had any feedback or even a specific episode that you can refer me to. It's tough because I felt like our last call was a little tense as my client wasn't being coachable, in which any questions felt very difficult for them. So naturally, not having any response has been putting me in a position to where I have anxious thoughts. I wish I had closure, even if it was hey, I no longer wish to continue. Any sort of feedback or resources that you could share or recommend would be greatly appreciated. And thank you so much for putting content out for us financial coaches. So I talked to her a little bit and, gave her my opinion on the situation. And then, I of course asked her if it was okay for us to even just talk about this on this episode, on this podcast episode. And she said yes. So, Jenny, I gave you something through Messenger, but this episode is for you and you're going to get more from me, but also from Maria. So I think it makes sense for us to start with you, Maria. Just hearing that. I mean, what's your perspective? What are some things that kind of stood out to you, and what's your message for Jenny?
Well, I think there's a few things that stood out, and with your permission, rather than me just, throwing them all out there, I'd like to kind of have a conversation with you about it. I did not realize at the start of this episode, Cody, that you had already had an actual conversation with her. So the pragmatist in me says, what does her session format look like? In other words, is it a 10 session, grouping? Is it one-on-one, just every time you come month by month that you just add on a new one? How does she know there was just one left? That's one of my questions first.
Yeah. So the conversation I did have with her was very brief.
Okay.
I basically just sent her a voice message in response to that message.
Oh, gotcha.
And then she just said thank you and blah, blah, blah. So I don't really know like the
details of this.
The details exactly. But I would imagine that she would have some format to where she has a timeline of her coaching program and a number of coaching sessions within it. And, she probably just had one left with them.
Okay. So I think where my mind went immediately and where I would actually like to stay, but it's not very pragmatic, is the whole idea about feeling anxious around this and wanting that closure and knowing that there was some tensity before she's just kind of ghosted you. And so with your permission, Cody, I think I'd kind of like to stay in that area of it for a little bit. The very fact, Jenny, that you felt that tension on your last one and you recognized that she wasn't being coachable, or he, I don't know. The interactions that you had, you said the questions were really difficult for this individual to answer. I think that sometimes means that you're hitting something really important and really uncomfortable for the client.
I would agree.
I don't want to make this about me, but I do have a very recent story that I can share that is kind of similar to this. And it was more in a group setting, more of like a teaching setting. It was financial teaching, but it wasn't one-to-one coaching. But in this particular series that we offer, there was a time when we talked about the way that we think and behave around money and our underlying thoughts and our underlying beliefs. And one of the participants in that group, she was sharing something. And when I challenged that belief, I thought, oh, maybe that's one of the underlying beliefs. She immediately said, no, it's not. I was like, oh, I think I struck a chord there. And whatever the interaction was right after that. Now, mind you, this was literally as the class was wrapping up. So she was on her way out the door. And I kind of sensed, just like Jenny has sensed, that there was some real tension there. Would you know she never came back to the class? That was like the second or third of a series of 5 or 6, and she never came back. And the first time she didn't come back, we thought, oh, maybe she's just working. And then the second time she didn't come back, I said to my partner, I said, I wonder if it's because of the interaction that we had. And one of the other participants said, oh, I saw her storming out the door last time. So at that point, I'm like, it probably was that interaction. And I share that because it weighed on me personally for at least a couple of weeks after that. And I'm like, oh gosh, like what did I do or say that may have created this issue? And then eventually I came to the idea that it probably was more of a her thing than it was a me thing.
Yep.
And I think that with Jenny, I think that's probably the case here as well, especially if you are a professional and you asked questions, you didn't make a bunch of random statements to her. Chances are it was just that you asked questions that hit in such a way that they were very convicting for your client. And she's just not in a place to be able to answer those. And so seeing you, hearing from you, looking at messages and missed calls from you, that brings all of that up for her. And so it's a very uncomfortable place.
I completely agree. And that's, in short, part of what I kind of told her as well already.
Okay.
Is that, it's not necessarily a you thing. It's more so a them thing. Because to me, like if she's asking questions that do hit that emotional or mental string that causes this type of reaction, those are probably some good questions that they probably need to be asked.
Yeah.
Now, there is a chance that maybe the questions were asked in a way that wasn't received very well, and that might be a her thing kind of thing. So I don't want to completely say it's none of her responsibility. But at the same time, that's probably what's going on there. To me, like, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, do you?
No, I don't think there is. I wonder what the need though for closure. Where does that come from? And I'm guessing it's because, Jenny, you very much like many of the other financial coaches that we've encountered have a really strong heart for this, and you want to be able to give back to people. And it kind of, I don't want to say hurts your feelings, but it hurts when you know you've hurt somebody else, or when you believe that you've hurt somebody else. And I know that's what I wrestled with for that couple of weeks was, did I do something to a fellow individual that was hurtful to them? And so I, reconciled with that. But at the same time had to recognize that the other side of that coin is, if I wasn't being rude, then I was just revealing something that was maybe a little bit too raw for that individual to have to deal with. So there's a couple of things, Jenny. I think that I wouldn't hound this individual. And Cody, please jump in if you think that you would do something totally different. But I wouldn't hound this individual, but I wouldn't write him or her off either. And I think that's because if indeed you touch something, remember the whole stages of change thing, just because we're not ready to hear something now doesn't mean that we're not willing to change it later. And if you are that person who's kind of like the agent of change for that individual, then maybe just every once in a while checking back in on them will give them the recognition that you haven't given up on them. And when they're ready, they will feel comfortable coming back to you. I don't personally have connection with this individual who I may or may not have hurt their feelings. And so I'm not able to do this part of it. But if you feel like there's something that you actually might have done, I think it's okay to send some sort of apology, not a groveling thing, but, just a recognition of, if there was something that I said or did, please accept my apology for that. And I want to make sure that it doesn't interfere with all of the progress that you've already made up until this point. Yeah. And I'm guessing if it's the last session, then there must have been some progress made. Now, let's also go to, if there wasn't progress made, maybe that's why this person doesn't want to come back for that last session. Maybe, I don't know. I don't even know where I'm going with that, except that there is a possibility that if this was the last session because it was just a numbered session, because some coaches say, well, we're going to work together as long as you're getting value, right? Mm-hmm. Some coaches say we have a 10-week program and then we can graduate you into this other continuation program. And some coaches just say, we're going to do, 4 weeks and that's my program and we're done. So whichever type of program this is might determine whether or not this last session was one that came after lots of change or after just the very, foundations were laid.
Yeah. I think the anxiety comes in from a place of like imposter syndrome. It's like, well, I put in all this time and energy with this person and it, got through the majority of it. And now they don't want to continue with me because it's a me problem, right? Mm-hmm. Like, am I actually good at this?
Yeah. And I'm giving the value that I promised and paid for.
Yeah. Are the people that I'm actually serving, actually benefiting from it because this is happening? And that's a sign that maybe they're not, kind of thing. Right. So I think that that's where a lot of the anxiety is coming in from. There might be another side of like, hey, like maybe she was going to get paid one more time and she was really counting on that as well. There's a part of that too. But I think that most of it is that she's taking it very personally. Mm-hmm. Which goes back to the conversation that we've had several times in this podcast about not taking credit for your client's successes and or their downfalls.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And this is a prime example of that. Like don't take responsibility for this person's success and don't take responsibility for this person potentially dropping out, early kind of thing. So there is one even like personal story I would like to share that I experienced, I would say like 3 or 4 weeks ago kind of thing. Now, this wasn't a client that I'm working with, but instead it was a couple that I talked to on a consultation. And long story short, the consultation ended to where the wife wanted to move forward and the husband wanted nothing to do with it. And I'll give you a very brief explanation on the dynamic of them as a couple and also their relationship with money. So the wife was the one who basically handled everything. And she had been doing that for a long time. And because of that, things have gotten out of control. Right.
So she hasn't handled them well?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. And she has been feeling just like immense pressure, overwhelm, and she's also been feeling very unsupported and very alone in this whole process. She also had, a couple of teenage kids. One is about 19 who just struggles to even show up to work. And then the other one is 16 who is a 16-year-old girl. Mm-hmm. Right?
Enough said.
Yeah.
I have those, so I understand.
Yeah. And the husband, he wants nothing to do with money. He's like, I like making money, but I don't like dealing with money. I don't like looking at it. I don't like talking about it. I don't like thinking about it. Nothing. So he's just avoiding.
Spending it?
What's that?
Does he like spending it?
Not really.
Okay.
No, he just keeps avoiding and avoiding and avoiding and avoiding and avoiding. And, when we talk through things, I kind of asked, the husband, I was like, hey, if we were able to figure out a way to have you guys come together and work together on this so you can communicate and, your wife feels supported, but at the same time, like it's not adding too much onto your plate. And you're still able to, have your own independence as well, but you're just being united and working as a team on this. Is that something that you feel like would be beneficial to you? And the exact phrase that he said is, if it's something that works for my wife, I'll support her with it. And at first I was like, okay, cool. But then the wife jumped in and she was like, well, what he's actually saying is, I can work with you, Cody, and he'll just be there. And that's it. Like, he won't actually be involved. He won't, talk to me about it. He won't make decisions with me, anything like that. And I said, is that true to the husband? And he said, essentially, yes. And I was like, okay. So with their marriage, their kids have their own problems. Like one of them isn't showing up to work and, really isn't showing any sort of like ambition. Mm-hmm. And the other one is very, very stubborn, very argumentative, and also, kind of uses her parents as like a bankroll kind of thing. And that was the one thing that the husband said was a pain point for him. He's like, I want my kids to grow up. I want my kids to get off my payroll. And I want them to be responsible and like all this kinds of stuff. Right. And there's more to it. So take this with a grain of salt. But essentially the one thing that I said to the husband was, you are the one of the parents that are the more like lay down the law, whereas the wife is more of a, for lack of a better term, kind of like a pushover with those kids, right? And while the kids are being irresponsible with their money and they're not, going after it and they're, spending all of your money and all those kinds of stuff, what they're doing is they're watching the mom, who is one who handles the money, struggle with it by, being a pushover, not getting the support that she needs, and really not knowing how to do it at the best capacity. But then we look at dad, and he is the one who's relatively better with money because he doesn't have a spending problem, whereas the wife does. But he doesn't lead in any sort of way. He doesn't, say anything. He doesn't show support. He doesn't give those guidelines or those roadmap for those kids. And I was like, the reason that your kids don't have ambition, aren't being responsible, and, are essentially taking advantage of your wife is because your leadership as a father and husband is lacking. So you need to step up.
That. I'm sure he loved that. Is the 18-year-old a boy?
19, yes.
The 19-year-old? Yeah.
Yeah.
Why am I not surprised? I'm not. It's like they're almost mimicking mom and dad.
Right.
right? Like
Right.
literally the one that is the spender, the one who doesn't have ambition. Yeah. So, okay. So how did he react to that?
He took it. And then when we got to the point to where, I asked them if they were curious about learning more, that's when that whole like idea of, are you interested in, helping your wife with this conversation came in. So I went into it. And then as soon as I went into the investment portion, the wife pauses me and she goes, "Oh, well, so-and-so actually just went to the bathroom." And I'm like, okay.
Her husband? Is that the
Yes.
so-and-so?
Yeah,
Okay.
her husband. Yes.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay. So her and I chatted for like 10 or 15 minutes. And I was like, "So is your husband back?" And she goes,
No bad
"No,
stomach issues.
no, he's not." And I'm like, "Do you think it's going to be a while?" And she goes, "Yes." So I was like, great. So I went through the whole thing with her. And then, of course, it ended with, "Well, I can't make this decision without my husband." And I'm like, naturally, yes,
He's
of
sitting
course.
on the couch right now.
Right. So I ended up having to wrap up that call and basically schedule a time with her the next day to just like reconnect and see how they feel.
Mm-hmm.
But I already knew how it went because he didn't have to go to the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
He locked himself away because he didn't want to hear it. He wanted to avoid it. And he was going in that same behavior that he has been the entire time. Right. So we reconnected the next day. And of course, she said that, they talked about it and, she really wants to do it, but he is completely against it, that he thinks that the whole psychology thing is a scam. She also said like, he really didn't appreciate what you said about, leading and stepping up and blah, blah, blah. And you know what I told her?
No, but I'm about to.
I said, "I don't care if he didn't appreciate it. He needed to hear it. And you know what? I'll say it 10 more times to him." I said that verbatim to her. And she goes, "Oh, I agree. He did need to hear that." Right? So we didn't end up working together. But my point is like, if someone needs to hear something and they really need to be checked, do not shy away from that. Even if it means that you're not going to get that client. Even if it means that you're going to rub someone the wrong way because you touch something in their heart or in their mind that is a vulnerability or a weakness for them. Don't shy away from that because we are not in this to just simply go through the motions and get paid for, giving a service that we're tailoring and tweaking to make sure we don't offend someone. That's not why we're doing this. We did this and we got into this to actually make a change in people's hearts, minds, and lives. Full stop. Full stop. So my message to Jenny here is, hey, if this person got offended by you telling them something that they really needed to hear, let them be offended.
Yeah. If it was the truth and you did it in truth, then I agree with that statement. 100%. Yeah.
And furthermore, maybe this person wasn't the right person for you. Just like how those people, that couple, wasn't the right people for me. Maybe the wife was, but the husband wasn't, at least at this time. And maybe they will be in the future. They have my contact information, but for right now, they're not. And I'm okay with that because then I can take my time, my energy, my mental bandwidth, and actually invest into the people who are the right people for me, and I am the right people for them.
Yeah. Amen to that. And I think that's actually a really good place to just kind of bring this to a head and say, Jenny, you have already probably given this more thought, more concern, more emotion, more energy than that person has. And when that's the case, now we're kind of in that area of crossed boundaries because this is not yours to have to bear anymore. Don't let them live rent free in your head. You have exactly what Cody just said. You have other people who are needing what you have to offer. And if you're sitting in this space, you're not going to be out there offering that to those people who need it. And so, yeah, Cody, I think you said it really, really well at the end there.
Well, thanks, Maria.
You're welcome. Well, I should have just said, okay, that wraps it up.
Yeah. Well, I'll go ahead and say that because I feel like this is a really good place to stop. So, Jenny, keep doing what you're doing. Don't shy away from who you are and your strengths, and say what you need to say, and the right people will appreciate it for sure. You're doing a great job. Just keep your head up. Keep moving forward.
And way to reach out for help, man. Seriously, I'll end with that part. The fact that you were willing to reach out to Cody with that says so much about your character and your willingness to continue to learn. So continue doing that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Alrighty, guys. Well, this does it for this episode of the Financial Coaches Podcast. We appreciate you tuning in once again, and we hope to see you, or we hope that you listen to us, whatever it might be, next week. Catch you then.
Thank you for listening to the Financial Coaches Podcast, brought to you by New Money Habits and Sizemore Financial Coaching. Submit your questions to our hosts by emailing podcast@newmoneyhabits.com. Be sure to subscribe to be notified of future episodes and join our growing group of like-minded coaches on Facebook. And until next time, happy coaching.